Welcome everyone to the Dr. Abs Healthcast. I'm your host, Dr. Brian Abasolo, aka Dr. Abs. Really excited about today's show. We have Meredith Kelly Oak on today. She's the co-founder of Quantum Health TV, the world's first video streaming channel focused on decentralizing health education, where medical experts break down the emerging science of circadian health and quantum biology. She's an ICF accredited executive coach, and Meredith has lived and worked on 3 continents, helping clients from all over the world to improve their lives by changing their beliefs and habits. She began her career working in media, covering entertainment and interviewing movie stars before she shifted into communications and coaching. Now through Quantum Health TV, she is helping people suffering from chronic illness by providing accessible information that is years ahead of what most doctors and naturopaths are currently practicing. Meredith is married with 3 children and is a proud global nomad. I'm very interested to hear what Meredith has to say, so let's bring on Meredith Kelly Oak. Welcome to the show, Meredith. How are you doing today?
I am so good, Dr. Abs. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So you are the founder of Quantum Health TV, and you basically help people that are suffering from chronic illness by providing accessible information that is years ahead of what most doctors and naturopaths are currently practicing. So I'm really interested to hear on what's on the forefront, coming up in the future as far as natural health. So let's dive right in, if you wouldn't mind. You talk about blue light being the new sugar and sunscreen being the new margarine. And you talk about how nobody's actually talking about it. Like, what do you mean by saying that?
Okay, so what I mean by that is most people who have any kind of health consciousness, who have raised their awareness about their health, limit their intake of sugar, right? We all know that an unlimited amount of sugar in our diet has very bad health effects. Yes. And so we're like, you know what? I'm going to have water instead of iced tea because there's no sugar in water. And then when I do have sugar, it's intentional. It's like, you know what? My daughter made these delicious cookies. I'm going to eat one.
Yes.
When it comes to blue light, we have no intentionality behind it at all. We have an idea that we can consume, and our body is consuming the light. We can consume as much as we want, anytime we want, no problem, no consequence. And it's not true. We need to think about blue light the way we think about sugar, because and this is where the future comes in, our cells are programmed to read light frequencies. And blue light has a very specific frequency that can be totally toxic in if we have too much of it and if we have it at the wrong time of day.
And what exactly is blue light for the audience? Can you describe examples of where we get blue light from?
So yeah, blue light is present in sunlight. It's a light frequency. However, when you are exposed to blue light from the sun, it's also balanced out by many, many, many other frequencies on the light spectrum, red and orange and green and all these other things. Blue light that comes out of a device like your phone, your laptop, your television, anything with a screen basically is giving off blue light. And the blue light coming out of that device is a very, very narrow frequency. And so what it does is it sends the signal to your brain and to your cells that it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon, even if it's 10 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock in the morning. And so the very specific symphony that our bodies orchestrate on a daily basis, the conductor of that symphony is the sun. And when we switch out that conductor for the blue light coming out of our devices, it's chaos. the symphony can't play together.
So it's like artificial blue light that we're getting from all these devices. Now, what's the solution? Because I've heard of those, are they called blue blockers, like the glasses that people can put on to kind of limit the blue light exposure? I mean, what's the solution for people out there?
Yeah, blue blockers are a great solution. And it's a twofold thing, right? Which is why we started off talking about sunscreen being the new margarine, because in addition to wanting to limit blue light the way we limit sugar, we also want to increase our exposure to the sun.
Yes.
The way we increase our intake of pure water and healthy food. So the antidote is for the blue light is to wear blue blockers. There's a great software program that you can get for your laptop called Iris. I have zero connection to them. It's not my
Iris.
product. I love it. And it's pre-programmed if you want, or you can manually set it, and you can just pull all the blue light out of your screen as it gets later in the day. So
wow.
When you want to avoid blue light is after sunset, because that's when it does not exist in nature. So you can pull it out. You can put the software on your laptop. You can wear blue blockers. Those work really well. That's what we use in our family because we still watch movies and things like that. But yeah, it's not that hard. We just have to wrap our minds around the fact that we have to do it.
Kind of make it a routine. Now, talk to me about sunscreen. Why is that considered, quote unquote, the new margarine?
So I actually stole that line from a great article in Outside Magazine in 2019. And the journalist who wrote that did a little deep dive into sunscreen, and that was kind of his conclusion. And what I mean by that is that margarine was like this sort of man-made product that was touted as being healthier than butter or things that come from animals in nature.
Was it, I can't believe it's not butter?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I used to eat that as a kid. I didn't know. I was like, oh, this is healthier. It's like, no, it's not.
Exactly. That's what we do, right? As people, like we make something and then we like make decisions about it and tell everyone, and then everyone believes us, and then we end up worse off.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we've done with sunscreen. Like, right. Like a little bit of sunscreen is fine if when we're skiing, we put zinc on our faces. If we're out on the water, you're out like surfing or somewhere where you can't go in the shade, a little bit of zinc or something that creates a physical barrier, no problem. But this idea that every single time we leave the house, we need to have some kind of SPF mediating our exposure to the sun is crazy and wrong and dangerous, because we need that sun. We need that sun exposure. And there's ways to get out in the sun where you don't burn and it's healthy and it's fine, but we've made ourselves scared of it.
Yeah. As far as you mentioned zinc, so obviously that's like a mineral version. Are you mainly talking about like the chemical sunscreens, the avobenzone and because I've talked to a lot of dermatologists and they always tell me, always use the mineral version. Don't use that other chemical stuff. If you're going to go outside, obviously, don't overexpose yourself to the sun. You don't want to burn, but you definitely want to get the sunlight because obviously that produces vitamin D3. But if you are going to use sunscreen or sunblock, always use the mineral. So are you on that train as well?
Yeah, absolutely. But and my train is I don't use sunscreen. I don't put sunscreen on my kids. We never use sunscreen unless we're in a really specific situation where they can't go in the shade, like I said, skiing.
So if you were like on a beach, like how would you handle it?
So we've had lots of beach vacations, and I just tell the kids, like, if you feel like you're getting burned, go in the shade for a while, and they do. And the other piece of it is that you can, in the same way that you can build your endurance as an athlete, but you wouldn't start out, lifting hundreds of pounds or running a marathon. It's the same thing with the sun, right? You can, even very, very pale people can build up a capacity to be in the sun for longer and longer without burning if you start out slow, and there's certain protocols to follow, but it's an incredibly healthy thing to do, is to get your body to a place where you can be in the sun for moderate amounts of time without burning, because then you're getting the maximum benefits.
I believe that because I've gradually built up a tan. Like I go out tan, maybe get another hour, and then little by little, you just build up that tolerance. But then I've also been pale for a while and then just jumped out there and it's a disaster the next day. I'm like hurting. Let's talk about something else you speak about on your channel. Why is radical personal responsibility and research, why are they the key ingredients to being healthy?
So I feel like there was a time where this might not have been a controversial thing to say. I feel like at the moment it has become a little controversial because the idea of doing independent research maybe doesn't mean what it used to mean. But what it means for me is that we cannot rely on other people to always have the answers that we need, especially as the incidence of chronic illnesses increase, because our doctors don't have good answers for that.
Yeah.
So I started this whole journey because I had chronic fatigue, right? And I went to the doctor. I did, everyone should have a doctor. Absolutely. Have a primary care physician. It's very important. Do your checkups, listen to their feedback. But my primary care physician was like, your labs are normal, you're fine. And I didn't feel well. Yeah. I did not feel fine, to the point where it was, infringing on the quality of my life. So I did my own research and found my own answers. And, I think the chronic fatigue was an early warning sign, and I'd probably be sicker right now. And to the point where the doctor would have to take care of me. Wow. But we have reached a point where the typical indoor lifestyle of most people is so at odds with what the human body needs to thrive. Yeah. That if we don't take responsibility and look at everything, not just our food, but our physical environment and our light environment and how much time we get to spend outside and all of these things, if we don't do that, we're going to get sick. It's not a maybe.
If then when.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And how can we avoid this quote unquote misinformation trap and the conspiracy theory landmines? Like, how can we avoid all that and get like quality health information? Like, how do you do it?
It's tricky and it takes time. So that's part of the reason that we're doing the project that we did, because I'm doing this with my husband, and for us to get to a place where we felt like we were following real science and not like theories or something that somebody thought could be true, but they weren't sure. But to get to a place where we felt certain that we were following the best, newest, but proven science, it took a lot of research and a lot of time.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's that. But what I would say is to take the time to go to the source. If you read an article about something that says something and they find the source of it, find the printed, peer-reviewed scientific research. And people are a bit scared of that. I certainly was. I'm an English major. Like, this is reading scientific papers on cellular biology is like,
yeah.
But what I came to understand is that every scientific paper has something at the top called an abstract.
Yep.
Right. Which is
summary.
Just like a little summary that if you can read, you can understand that. Yeah. So when you hear something, like, even if something I've said on here sounds crazy to you, go to PubMed, which is where all the scientific papers are, and type in circadian biology disrupt. And there's dozens of papers.
Plethora of information.
Yeah. Showing how sick you can be just from messing up your circadian rhythms with bad light.
Wow. So going back to your fatigue, like, what did you end up doing? I mean, you talked about your doctor. You said you were fine. The blood work was okay. Like, what did you find through your research, and did you eventually solve the problem?
I think it's an ongoing thing. Anyone with a chronic illness, or I don't even like to say illness, but anyone with chronic symptoms knows that it took time to get there, and it takes time to get out. And I started with my primary care physician. Then I did a naturopath, and I did a different kind of naturopath. I did acupuncture. I did all of these things, and they all helped. Diet absolutely is huge. But then I plateaued, and it wasn't until I got serious about changing my light environment that I actually started to have a real breakthrough, right? Like, to the point where I feel like a normal person now.
Wow.
And that was, it started out like, I guess I'll get some blue blockers. But when I first started researching this, I was reading my book before I went to sleep on my iPad. right?
like
So
like all that light into
yeah,
your face. Yeah.
so any strides I'd made that day by eating well and resting and meditating and going outside, like I was just destroying because I didn't have that one piece of information.
Wow. That's incredible. So let's talk about, you talk about these three essential elements of creating lasting health change. What are they?
Yeah. So there, it's not rocket science, but it's helpful to think about it in three steps. And the first is what we just talked about, which is educating yourself, right? Like not just saying like, oh, I'll just eat whatever gets put in front of me, right? Like we're intentional about it. And so I think we need to expand. I think a lot of people who are health conscious have gotten really good about doing that with their food. And I think my message is to expand that to the rest of your environment, including especially your light.
Yeah.
And so the first piece is educate yourself. Just learn. You don't need to like get a degree in science, but just learn some basic stuff. Like, like sugar is bad and don't
Yeah.
eat too many carbs or whatever, like just that. Then the second thing is to have some community. This could be an online Facebook group. It could be joining a coaching program. It could be listening to shows like this, where, you just get some reinforcement that I'm not the only one, because being on the forefront of a health change, like people think you're weird, and that's just kind of the way it goes.
Yeah. No,
And then the third piece would be to hire a guide, which would be either a doctor or a health coach or somebody where they know or a chiropractor, right? Like
yes.
somebody who knows your case really deeply and can help you make those really important specific choices that you can't make yourself just by reading stuff on the internet, or no matter how much research I did, it wasn't until I started working one-on-one with a doctor who understands these things that I was able to really break through. So it's personal education, it's community, so you don't feel alone and quit, and then it's finding somebody to take on your case and work with you, even if you feel okay. Right. That's the other thing I would add is,
I feel like we all need that accountability sometimes to, motivate us and, get us through those hurdles, or those health hurdles. So I absolutely agree with you. And you have 3 kids, is that correct?
Yes.
So talk to me about your kids, like, raising them, maybe sometimes you have them do what they consider weird health stuff. How do you incorporate those natural health methods without essentially harming your relationship with your family?
Yeah. Well, I put the relationship first. So if I'm, I have a 15-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 7-year-old. So when we started doing all this stuff, they were a little bit younger, which meant they were a little bit more malleable.
Yeah.
But if I'm in a place with one of them where there's some tension or there's been some struggles about homework or whatever, that's not the moment I choose to introduce a new health protocol, right? Like I am mindful of where I am with that person in our general relationship. And I'm mindful what I need to do to get the relationship to a place where I can make a suggestion and it's not going to totally piss them off. So the first part is prioritizing the relationship over everything else and getting it to a place where you're somebody that they're willing to listen to. The second part is I just fully acknowledge, I'm like, I know we're crazy. Yes. They're like, Mom, oh my God. Like we have red light bulbs in our house. So at night,
that's what goes up.
That's what comes on. And we have a small red, like therapeutic light to do photobiomodulation, which is a whole other thing, but, and we travel with it. Yeah. So we rented a little like condo by the beach last summer, and my daughter went out for a walk and she forgot which condo we were in. And she's like, so I just followed the red light to the place that looked like Chernobyl was going to melt down.
it's like the flare for her. Yeah. And how old are the kids?
15, 12, and 7.
Okay. So like, do you have an example of maybe something that they were resistant to? I mean, is it the red light or anything else that you could talk about?
They don't love the blue blockers.
They don't love the blue blockers. Why is that?
they think, well, my daughter, they think they're ugly and weird.
Okay.
And it's also a bit annoying. Like your movie looks a little orange, right? Like your Fortnite game doesn't look quite the same once you put them on, because you are blocking out a significant portion of the light that's coming out of the screen. But we have a big basket and we've got a bunch of blue blockers in, and I'm just, and it's like, I know it's annoying and weird, but that's what we do. And if you want to have the screen on, then it's going to have to kind of be this way.
Yeah.
And it's getting a little more accepted, the blue blocking. Like there's the gaming glasses, and my son calls them gaming glasses, not blue blockers.
It's the cool name. It's the cool name.
Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about, you talked about doctors not having all the answers. Like, let's talk about how to navigate the traditional healthcare. Doctors are heroes, but as you mentioned, doctors aren't coming to save you, excuse me. So, how do we navigate choosing a provider and somebody that's going to have the best interests for our health?
Yeah. Well, for me, and what I kind of recommend, right, is like to cover all the bases. So, traditional medicine from a primary care provider is extremely important and provides so many things that we're blessed and privileged to have access to in terms of medicine and life-saving techniques if anything happened. So I'm in no way against that. I think everyone, should have a doctor and have a checkup once a year at least.
Yes.
That being said, there are limits, to what they're able to help with. And a lot of the chronic illness that's really ruining people's lives right now, like fibromyalgia or Lyme or lupus or Hashimoto's or chronic fatigue or all of those kinds of things. Most traditional doctors they don't have the tools to deal with those. And so that's where we need to branch out and find and do our research and find somebody who can cover those bases and who is doing research to find out the new things, because the traditional system it's very good at innovating on surgery techniques, but it's not so good at innovating on basic health protocols and preventative measures and things like that. So we really need to find somebody and know, so my go-to strategy is like, is this something that I think I might need medication for? I'll go to my doctor first. If the doctor can't, or, medication's not going to help, or I don't want to take it for some reason, then I move on to a natural healthcare provider and see what they have to say.
Gotcha.
And just, go back and forth. It's not all or nothing. It's on a case by case basis, and who's helping and who's not. Am I making progress with this person? And I think if I just find the perfect naturopath or the perfect alternative health doctor, everything will be better. People have different specialties. One doctor might get you, the first couple of miles beautifully, and then it might be time, you might need somebody else. So just be mindful of the progress. Remember, it might take a village to work through, and it's not going to be any one person or any one system necessarily.
I love that. I mean, not one person has all the answers, right? Like, I think, like you said, it takes a village. So as far as you and your family, like, I imagine you have like a team of providers that, you can go to. I mean, just to mention their titles, like who would you go to in situations where there is a health concern?
So after a long time of searching, I actually have found a doctor who is both an MD and a natural health practitioner.
Nice.
We also go to acupuncturists, we go to chiropractors, we go to energy workers, we go to homeopaths. But our primary care provider is an integrative MD.
Amazing. Yeah. It's kind of like the best of both worlds, right? So, I mean, that's such great information today, Meredith. Where can people find your channels? Like, I want to promote your channel and, anything you have on social media, your handles. Can you mention that?
Yeah, absolutely. We're at quantumhealth.tv, which is a subscription channel that gives educational videos on the basics of these things. because we just found, it's hard to make decisions when you have no idea why you're doing it.
Yeah.
And then we're on Quantum Health TV on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube.
Awesome. And as far as the education, I mean, do you guys bring on, different providers and things like that to talk on certain subjects?
Yeah. So we actually interview doctors from all over the world.
Very nice.
Who have implemented what we call quantum biology, because that's where the idea that light affects your health is only true if you can acknowledge that quantum mechanical processes happen at the biologic level, which up until about 8 years ago was not considered to be true. And there's some scientists who, an astrophysicist and a biologist came together, which doesn't happen that often in academia. They just had a meeting of the minds, and they conducted a series of experiments, and they have now, as much as you can prove anything in science, but they have created some strong evidence that actually quantum mechanics happens in warm, wet environments, such as the human body. So once that's true, a whole lot of things change in terms of how your environment affects your health, particularly regarding light, but also sound, all kinds of things. So we have found, we went and searched doctors all over the world who've incorporated that into their clinical practice, and we interviewed them all.
Wow. And what do they say the results with their patients has been?
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge. They have, they tend to get people who've tried everything, right? So they tend to get people who've been chronically ill and have tried all the other routes. But if, like I was saying about reading my iPad before bed, right? Like if there's this huge piece that's missing, and there is, it's huge. To not take light into account you may as well not take food into account, or
wow.
You might as well live in a moldy basement and wonder why you're sick, right? It's huge.
Wow.
So they've been having extremely good outcomes and results.
Awesome.
And more, they're becoming teachers more than anything else, as more healthcare practitioners come to them to learn about it.
That's great. So, I've learned a lot today on today's episode. So Quantum Health TV, you mentioned Iris for the computer screen.
Yeah.
Right. The blue blockers I definitely have heard of. I definitely need to get a pair. So, and focus on light, everybody out there. It's very important, as Meredith talks about. Meredith, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and, all the information with us. I really appreciate it.
Hey, it's my pleasure.
All right.
Anytime.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks.